Session 15, January 13, 1964. Rob noted, greetings. They said, yes, good evening. Have you recovered? Rob said, yes, I think we have, said. They said, that's good. Rob said, we are having a storm here tonight. They said, storming to the stormy. Rob said, do you get storms where you are? They said, I get not your kind of storms, but I am not going into so-called weather on my plane tonight. I came halfway in on an interesting little experiment that Ruber tried on his own, and you can thank me that he came out of it so well. Really, Ruber, I am surprised at you. In your past life, you would have known much better. Consciously, you didn't know what you were up to, but unconsciously, you knew very well. This sort of dissociated state can be dangerous, particularly induced haphazardly, as was certainly the case with you. If I had not happened to look in, you would have been in a great state for the rest of the evening, or should I say morning. And yet, you had the nerve to suggest that I played a part. Trickery is not one of my qualities, at least not trickery of that type, so you need have no worries on that score. The state of dissociation that you reached can be used most effectively. You, however, floundered into it all unaware and unprepared. For shame. The fact that you slipped so easily into this frame should remind you of abilities that you had at one time, that you misused then, but without their previous experience, you could not have entered such a state so quickly, with so little knowledge and preparation. When I mentioned homework, I was not thinking of anything so strenuous, or certainly suggesting anything that could be so dangerous to you at the present time. That state which you achieved could be likened to my state, except that I am fully conscious and able to use the abilities inherent in it. As Joseph supposes, it may well have been possible for you to have levitated had he so suggested it, and he used extremely good judgment in refraining from such a suggestion. If you recall, part of your mind was conscious. You were capable of normal conversation. Another part of your psyche was completely dissociated and waiting for your command. It floundered like a wet rug in a foul wind. This all ties in with the personality fragments which we discussed earlier. In like manner, the personality is divided. One part conscious of the primary self and another disconnected and waiting formation into something new. On a subconscious basis, this is exactly how you both created the images at York Beach. The difference being that the personality split occurred on the subconscious level. I should clarify this perhaps by saying that the split was a split of the entire subconscious. In Ruber's case, that January 10th, the split was of the conscious level. Since Ruber was unaware of causing the dissociation to begin with, he was unable to find his floundering way out. Incidentally, so-called schizophrenia follows in many cases along these lines. As for the writing, it was by an unorganized, unformed, possible personality of Ruber's that merely took this opportunity to show itself and supersede a strong hand which has always dominated it. Joseph, your part in these sessions is extremely important. Without your participation, they could not have begun, nor could they continue. Because of our past alliances, the three of us are closely bound together. However, I need the two of you in order to come through at all. Later you will understand why this is so. Rupert, you will cease smoking within 2 weeks. For one thing, it is harmful, and believe me, I will go into the reasons at a later date. They are so little understood. For another, I refuse to sound like a horse. It is not good for my morale. Your voice is too sensitive and raw this evening for me to attempt any transformation of it into the more melodious accents of my own. I suggest only to give Jane's much maligned vocal cords a rest, that you take a break for a few minutes, though, as you will note by the clock, hardly a half hour has passed, hardly a test of your endurance. An excellent question. Schizophrenia is caused by a personality fragment that is broken off, so to speak, from the primary acting personality, operating often in direct opposition to the primary personality, but in any case operating as a secondary personality. In your York Beach experience, had you not been able through your peculiar creative abilities to form those images outside of yourself, and so endow them with a physical reality, you might very well have instead turned yourself into schizophrenia personalities. Even your psychologists know that the schizoid is at least temporarily two personalities, a primary or dominant personality and an inferior one. Many people are unable to endow fragments with such physical reality, and thus shove them more or less harmlessly away at arm's length. It is as if in Rupert's great experience the other night that the dissociated part of the personality donned another identity and battled with Rupert's own for dominance. Many so-called cases of possession can be laid to this alone. The dominant personality can be likened on your plane to the dominant entity. Please understand that I am using an analogy here, as the personality on your plane actually changes, expands and grows according to its potentialities, as it presents at various times varied images to the world, such as, if you'll excuse me for using cliches, a smiling face, a sorrowful face, but it's still basically the same personality. So on another level does the entity present at various times a varied appearance and speak in a different voice, as the smiling and the sorrowful face also express and expand the personality. So too do the various reincarnated personalities express and expand the entity as a whole. Without the stages of childhood, adulthood, and old age, the personality could not expand to its fullest degree. And without various incarnations, the entity cannot expand. Along these lines, your brother Dick will most likely have an extra visit made up on this earth for a previous early death. In dreaming, such a dissociated state as Rupert reached is of course the rule. Only here the ability is used to form the dream images. But these dream images work for the entity as a whole and serve as a means for the various personalities to communicate. That is, in many cases, for the previous incarnated personalities to correspond with the present personality. It is a means of acquainting the present personality with its past and also of reminding it of its goals, without disturbing that blatant awake ego. Joseph, when your hands grow tired, I'd wish you would volunteer to take a break and relieve me of an ever-growing compassionate concern for your physical condition. Surely after our pleasant chat the other evening, you should know nothing of this sort would offend me, and I would much prefer more broken-up sessions, if they are necessary, than sessions in which I see myself as a torture master. And please do not think of yourself as some sort of male stenographer. Though means I cannot explain at this date I could not speak the rubber without you, and a kink in your own present personality would quite prevent me from communicating with you alone, if indeed rubber would allow it. And if you are not good, I will have another cozy little chat that lasts until 3 o'clock in the morning. Ross said, okay, then we'll take a break. They said, excellent. They said, as a special favor, I would like to make a request. Will you for a moment turn off your main light and open your blinds and curtains or whatever, so that it may look out into the snowy night? While I am with you, I am in a way that I will explain later attached to Jane. In that I see what she sees, and so forth. I can of course dissociate myself, but the effort involved in doing this and returning is really not quite worth the effort. It is like putting one sort of diving equipment on, removing it from another, and then redonning the first. Costumes are not always physical attire. They may also serve as a sort of vehicle, in the manner of the diving equipment. The view is truly astounding. I am glad you live on such a nice corner, and as far as Aston is concerned, he saw more than he knew he saw, and he was more than he knew he was. We will go into this thoroughly when we return to our discussion of time. Your cat is indeed a fragment, and he does sense me at times. Rob asked, how about that time in the kitchen? They said his senses are extremely acute, his inner senses perfectly attuned. Even now he senses my presence. However, as he grows more familiar with me, his strange actions will altogether cease. My presence alternates between you both, and this leads to confusion on Willie's part. Watch him even now. Your vision experience is coming along well, Joseph. You can expect it to enlarge, grow, and mature, as Rupert's ability has already shown astounding progress. I hesitate to go into Jane's water-than experience at this time. Her conscious ego sets up barriers, and in all cases, she must willingly permit material to come through. Suffice it to say that she got rid of some previous responsibilities and paid off an old date. I have been visiting other planets lately. I grow quite gymnastic. Rob asked, said, will you tell us something about present Cantonese? They said he was your president, not mine. You know who the assassin was. Of course, the senseless slaughter was not foreordained. It was always a reign of the possible world, and the tragic circumstances culminated in much the same manner as Jane related in her ideal construction. Jack Kennedy himself had a premonition of events, and even in the midst of action, he was prepared for death. His subconscious mind always knew the true nature of death, and flirted with it consciously. When I said watch the cat, I didn't realize he was going to put on this display. I assure you I didn't order it. The good Jack will be a beggar boy in India, to be born in 3 years. In later life, he will attain prominence if he carries through as beautifully as he did in the past. His first name will be Amber, A-N-B-U-M, pronounced Emma. This time he will attain prominence from poverty, an experience which will greatly reinforce the strength of his entity's purpose. Oswald was always a personality fragment, as all psychopaths are. As fragments of a personality break off in the manner that I explained for schizophrenics, so in some cases, part of an entity reincarnates before it should, does not carry its full mental gene blueprint, and therefore causes trouble and confusion. It is as though one of the wild images of a nightmare emerged with full physical power into the world of the day. Such people realize their deficiency, yet conversely, because they do have a distorted but seemingly dominant I, they are only all the more furious and confused. There is no basic unifying factor to give them consistency, and no unifying subconscious memories to give them true inner identity. This is one of the main reasons why they strike out as strongly integrated personalities, and why it is so easy for them to be catapulted by raw emotion into tragedies of this sort. Nightmares represent only possibilities of disintegrations that rarely occur in actuality. I bring this up since I did mention the word in passing. They are usually not messages, as most dreams are from past personalities to the present personality, though they may be messages from the primary personality to itself, as notice of fear or panic that may exist directly beneath the strata of the primary personality. Beneath this, you will find the succeeding layers that have to do with personal reincarnations. Beneath these, you will find material dealing with the race as a whole, and as Jane supposed, even layers dealing with the pre-human state. The entity is the sum of these layers, having all of this knowledge at conscious command at all times. Yet, though I speak of them as one beneath the other, they are not actually so, and I speak only for convenience. They are in all places, intertwined with paths leading from one to the other, and with the echo of the entity's voice resounding through each interconnecting corridor. I have decided, as you have seen, to include a little new material this evening. However, I shall not neglect at any time to give you a thorough picture of any material that I have once discussed. Rob asked, "Can we take a break now?" They said, "You may take a break if you so desire." They said, "You are yourselves aware of other planes to some degree, and to some degree you can communicate with them as you communicate with your cat. Imagination allows you to enter into these planes, as when you imagine what another animal's life would be." It is true that man is physically an animal and that a cat is an animal. Nevertheless, the differences amount to a difference in plane, though they are not actually different enough, and so the various existences do manage to coexist. You cannot, of course, experience the cat's sense of time, but you can come closer to understanding his sense of time than he could ever come in understanding yours. There are, of course, therefore, obvious variations in life within one generalized plane, and many various sorts of evolution occurring. When I say I visit another plane, you can imagine the following experience. Pretend that not only understood your cat's concept of time to some degree, but could also experience his sense of time through the cat itself. In doing this, you would in no way bother, inhibit, or annoy the cat. He would not be aware of your presence, and in no way could this be represented as any sort of an invasion. Imagine further that you actually experienced the feeling of such a fury court, and all the other feline equipment from the inside. Purely as a spectator, this would loosely represent an analogy to my traveling to other planes. It follows that I could not travel to higher planes than my own, where more acute senses than mine would instantly perceive me. This sort of thing does not, as a rule, go on in your plane. Even with your limited senses, you would perceive my presence, though my plane is further developed than yours. So you see that the laws operate in such a manner that we are more or less kept in our place. Controls are applied. This subject will come up again and I will go into it more deeply. You have also seen that your cat can sense me to some extent when I am in his environment, so we do not get away with much. On many planes, we are fully visible to others on that plane. To some, we are invisible, and to us, some are invisible. Rob noted. I asked Jane, "Is Seth going to say anything about his form?" They said, as I have mentioned earlier, the senses change according to the plane of materialization. If you are speaking about my present form, I can be many forms. That is, within limits, I can change my form. But in doing so, I do not actually change my form so much as I choose to become part of something else. My incipient form is a man's form, if this is what you want to know, but it is not materialized in the same fashion as yours, that is, as your form, and I can dematerialize it whenever I choose. It is not, however, at all physical in your terms, and so here I suppose we will run into a block. The physical human form is extremely important to all entities, and they retain its ideal shape for a long while. Again, I will have more to say about the ideal shape, which is somewhat like the physical genes and the blueprint, only on a different manifestation level. I believe, though I'm not positive, that this human ideal shape vanishes at some point and changes into another that is somehow more fitting and ideal. The entity in itself may only be a part of something else. Ralph asked, "Can you tell us something about the dream Jane had, in which she seemed to be receiving instructions on psychic phenomena?" They said, "There are various types of dreams and dream fragments. I will follow this through also later, since in these beginning sessions I am giving you what may be considered a broad outline to be filled in. These dissociated states often occur in sleep, and at that time since the ego is quieted. At such times, it is entirely possible for present personalities to be visited by others, such as myself, but only on the bidding of the entity itself. I suggest that we close this session for this evening. I have endeavored to fill in some previously mentioned material tonight. After our last arduous meeting, you really needed a bit of relaxation. Nevertheless, as you read this material, you will see that it correlates with many other matters and forms necessary connections which will be important in future discussions. It is not that I wasn't feeling humorous this evening, merely that I didn't think you could stand the full force of my really astounding, sardonic nature. I just say these things to watch your reactions, and as far as assimilating our old friend Frank was, don't let me lead you too far astray. The entity never dominates or tries to dominate a previous personality. Sometimes these personalities also travel divergent ways for their own benefit and with the entity's full consent. There is no such thing as division as far as the personality is concerned. Even a full-fledged fragment can turn into an entity in certain cases. There are no rules that hold any living thing down to one form or one kind of existence. And now, dear patient friends, I bid you a most fond good night. Ralph said, "Goodbye," they said, fresh.